Mach 1.0 is live. It's been 2 years, Muench.
You don't say, Todd.
2 years since my last mock draft. I've been waiting, and the waiting is finally over today. Just 63 days until the NFL draft, and you're joining us for a special Mach 1.0 edition of the McShay Show. Muench, you good?
I'm good, man.
Damn right you are. Now let's play me those urban horns, would you please? Got till it's gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like 5 to 7 mock drafts, and Kuiper making up new versions of mock drafts, and just mock. Like that's all my former life was. Then I sit out a year, and now here we are in late February, and I'm like, I'm just itching. I'm itching to get a mock draft out there. I didn't even do one last year. I played around with one for myself to kind of watch. I did a top 100. Watch the tape, but I didn't do a full mock draft myself last year. I finally, now after 2 years, get to drop a mock draft, and it is here. It is here for your consumption. Thank you for being here, audience. We appreciate your support. The support is growing week in and week out. We're on with our business folks, and they're saying how the numbers are growing, and there's already people diving in to get these subscriptions. We appreciate it. Here's the deal. If you want the mock draft, Mach 1.0 for the 2025 NFL draft, just Google the McShay report. That's the easiest way right now. I'll send links on X. We'll have it in our bios on the social media. Muench will get involved and help out with you good Muench at both X and on Instagram. And also, you can look now on the screen and you'll see. You can just click on the link. If you're watching this on YouTube, click on the link, subscribe to the newsletter. It's the McShay report. The Ringer is like just unbelievable partnership helping us out with this. We've had folks all night long, Muench, like cramming for finals, right? Between Austin Gale and all the business portions of it with the subscriptions, Dan, Connor, Tucker, Eduardo, Mark, like the usual crew, but like late last night. I'm texting them at 7:30 my time. They're on the West Coast at 4:30, and I'm getting responses. So this has been a team effort through and through. Muench's work. I did a first version about 10 days ago. Muench worked through it with me. We made a couple tweaks. Talked to some more people as we got closer. Made a couple tweaks. Watch more film too. But here we are. And this is it, Mach 1.0. Things will obviously change. It's fluid. We've got the Combine coming up next week. There's no show on Monday, folks. But next week, we are loaded with content. Wednesday, previewing from the Combine with a lot of the measurables in and talking to different GMs and getting a lot of inside scoop of what's going on. Thursday, first day of workouts. Friday, second day of workouts. Saturday, the big day of workouts, right? The quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers. And then we'll be flying home on Sunday when the offensive linemen, after the offensive linemen have worked out. We'll get all those numbers, punch it all together, take a step back. And on Monday of next week, we will, or for the following week, like 10 days from now, whenever you're watching this, we will do a review show. So that's what's coming up. There's going to be a lot of content that we have coming out. But today is about the Mach 1.0. Again, Google the McShay report. It's the first link that you'll see there when you Google it. I'm not good at this, but I'm just going to rip through some notes here. Everything that I've got for the NFL draft is going to be right there. Click on that link. Everything from mock drafts to updated position rankings to top 350 when it's all said and done overall, top 100 to start out. We've got all the insider buzz, 25 years, Muench, of developing, cultivating relationships inside the league. We're going to do a lot of articles on what we're hearing. So if you're looking for anything having to do with the NFL draft, whether it's the player reports, the mock drafts, the inside scoop, whatever it is, for $4, you can have it all. It's all going to be exclusive content, right? And there's also a double down option where you can get for $36 this year's full draft all throughout the college season, starting in May when we start doing evaluations for next year, and ride it all the way through next year's draft. So for $36, you get
double down
the 2025 NFL draft and through the 2026 NFL draft. Listen, we need your support. The little engine that could. My boy Stevie Boy and I, we've been grinding away at this thing. And I hope you realize two things. One, your support is unbelievably appreciated by Steve and I. Okay? Truly. Number two, we don't take this lightly. Like, I'm not going to ask you for $4 or $36 over the next 2 years if I'm not going to put in the work. Like, the amount of film we're watching, the notes that we're sending back and forth to one another, Steve and I, the conversations I'm having, the roster studying that we're doing for NFL teams, the updated, this year's free agency, who's coming, who's going, what the needs are, studying the salary cap. Like, we're going through all of it. And all we're asking for, and we don't take it lightly, but we're asking for a few bucks here, $36 there for 2 years, and you can get all this information. But it's a business. We've got to do it. I know the comments are going to be frustrated. I was at ESPN for a long time, and the Insider and all of that. I understand it, and it's okay. Be pissed off. It's okay. But if you want I don't want to say the best. That's arrogant. If you want content that you can trust, that the work has been put in, and the relationships are there, and the content is there, and the film has been actually studied, this is a great place to do it, okay? So that's where we are. Whew. Can you tell I'm fired up, man?
It's great. It's great. I can't wait to get back into it. I love it.
So today
I still don't believe that you didn't do one last year. I trust you. I hear what you're saying, but I just imagine, like, even if you did it in your head, you had something going on.
Well, I mean, I literally was talking to GMs up to the night before the first round of the draft.
Right.
Like, I had a conversation with the team drafting in the top 10, and we're literally, like, he's asking me, like, what would you do here? Like,
right.
Like, we've decided, but I'm curious. Like, I'm not going to tell you exactly, but like, these are the three players.
Right.
And so, like, I absolutely worked the scenarios out, but I never sat down with all 32 picks and actually wrote it down. Quite honestly, it was kind of depressing to do it. Like, I got through like 16, 17 so that I could have these conversations and feel good about the information I had. So when I talked to another GM and then another GM, it would be, this is kind of how the landscape is, but never did the 32. Today, we're not going to go through every pick. This is not going to be like the old days where you watch Sports Center special and we're going through all 32 picks. We're not doing it for obvious reasons. We've got to get everyone on board. Please subscribe and be a part of this with us. But we will go through the first three picks. We'll give those away today. Then I want to go through some scenarios with you, Muench, kind of in the top 10, maybe some other picks. Muench has got some takeaways, maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know what they are, but he's going to go through, I think, four picks? Four picks you want to touch on.
Yeah.
And then do a little treatment for some of the positions and where we stand and where this class is really strong, where this class is lacking. And provide some historical perspective with all of that. Let's start at the top, man. Let's start at the top. Tennessee Titans. I think it's important to look at the board, right? My board, and you tell me if yours is different. Okay. Excuse me. I look at this as tiers. I always do. This year, unfortunately, the elite tier at the top, in my opinion, has 3 players in it. Now, there are a couple right behind where I think an argument can be made. And let's see how the workouts go. Let's see how the interviews go. And as we get closer, maybe the tier will grow, but I don't suspect it will. Okay. My elite tier this year does not include any quarterbacks. It's 3 positional players in Abdul Carter, Penn State, Travis Hunter, cornerback, wide receiver. Should have mentioned Abdul Carter, edge, obviously. Travis Hunter, cornerback, wide receiver. Cornerback first, by the way. Everyone I talk to in the league, he's got to play corner. That's what he did in college. There are installs and packages we can do with him offensively. There will be load management. There will be discussions about how to use them. But like, Muench, you and I know, like, when you meet, the majority of meetings that you have with a football team, whether it's in college or the NFL, is with your position group. You have offensive and defensive meetings. You have team meetings. But the most time you spend in meetings is with your position group. So from a technique standpoint, from a studying standpoint, from a scheme alignment standpoint, Travis Hunter's going to have to spend the vast majority of his time at cornerback in those meetings. But he's also going to be a part of the wide receiver meetings to a certain degree. There will be installs each week. And there will be, I don't want to say special treatment, but unique handling of him in order to allow him to play as many plays as possible while trying to keep him healthy and utilize his very unique set of skills. Okay. So it's Carter, it's Hunter, and I've included in there Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan, inside defensive line. Okay. So with that as a jumping off point, let's get to Tennessee. Mike Borgonzi, the new general manager, can't miss with this pick.
No.
And by the way, just talking to people in the league, this guy's an absolute stud. Like Tennessee got the right rising star, up and coming guy, according to my sources. In a perfect world, if this was last year, I think we all agree. If you got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, you take a quarterback here. The next 2 months is about drilling down and making sure you get the right guy at quarterback, but there are 3 options, right?
Right.
It's just not that year, in my opinion. Cam Ward, I think is, I don't want to say consensus, but league majority. Cam Ward's QB1. Shedeur Sanders, league majority, QB2. Jackson Dart, I don't know if it's league majority, but there's strong sense he could be late first. And there's not as big a gap, at least in my opinion, as big a gap between QB2 and QB3 with Shedeur and Dart. And Tyler Shuck is kind of, there's a groundswell of this guy with a lot to work through with 25 years of age, 3 years of injuries, 3 different schools, but damn, his tape is good. Okay.
Right.
But here's what I'm hearing. Okay. And it's early. This is exactly what I'm hearing. If there's a wish list for Borgonzi in Tennessee, it's to trade out of this pick. And I think that's why, and we said it at the time, but the more I talk to people in the league who I don't want to say are in the know, it's always what people are hearing. So it can be smoke screen information off of smoke screen information. So you never know for certain because no one in Tennessee is going to say a word, obviously, but information leaks out. The wish list, from my understanding, would be to trade out of this number 1 pick. And the reason why you're hearing from Pac-Man Jones that it's absolutely going to be Travis Hunter at number 1, the reason you're hearing from Tennessee, that from leadership there, that we're not going to pass on a generational pick, is to entice or I don't want to
drive up the value.
Drive up the value and make people realize, like, yeah, we'll stay here and we'll take Travis. Or maybe the generational talent is Abdul Carter, or maybe the generational talent's Cam Ward. We're not telling you who we think the generational talent is.
Yeah, and just to be clear, real quickly, you did not do any trades in this mock. You may do trades later on in other mocks, but you did not do that in this one.
Yeah, I fought for 5 years at ESPN, just behind the scenes a little bit. 5 years with producers, executives. Like, it was. I think
spilled onto the scenes a little bit.
I'm funny with this stuff. Like, I come barreling in sometimes, and I'm like, why don't we have trades? Trades happen. Why don't we have trades? And Kuiper's like, no, little kid, like, hand on head, push me down. And Mel was always the biggest promoter of my career. I don't want to create any drama.
Mel's great.
Not there. Mel's wonderful. Like,
right.
Mel and Kim, his wife, and Lauren, his daughter, like, they're like extended family. I love Mel, except when we disagree on players, then I can't stand Mel, like your cousin or uncle or older brother that drives you crazy, right? And so the fights were legitimate. They were not pre-scripted. The fights were legitimate, but the trade thing was one of the things where, like, I got put in my place for like 3 years, and then 4 years I made a little headway. Finally, like 5 years later, once I pitched the idea of trades, I got the green light, and he was pissed. He was pissed.
Did you really want trades, or I know you really wanted trades, but once he said no trades, did it just make you that more motivated to know we're doing this? That's the kind of relationship you guys had, right? A little bit.
You caught me.
It fired you up a little bit, right?
You caught me. Tell me I can't.
Exactly.
Tell me I can't.
Right.
So that's how that all worked. So I'm all for trades. And it was a long way to get back to this. I'm all for trades. Like, I didn't create a lot in this business, but I feel like I pushed that through in the mainstream of, like, we're doing trades from now on. That was one of my biggest impacts on this pre-draft process. All for trades. Now's not the time. Let's get all 32 markets. Let's get all 32 teams an opportunity to see what they need in this mock draft. That I just think it's the fair, right approach. And at this point, honestly, you're just throwing darts on the trade stuff. When you get closer and you've got more information and the combine's done and free agency is wrapped up and the team needs are a little bit more obvious and you're starting to have real conversations with people in the league, not like more surface level like we are right now, that's when you make more educated guesses, right? So, yes, no trades here. Thank you for bringing that up. Back to Tennessee. I went with Abdul Carter, edge, Penn State.
Yes.
There's the music.
Hot start. Let's go.
He's the best player in this draft.
Right.
And it's at a position of priority that is prioritized, in my opinion, over any other position outside of quarterback.
Agree.
So again, the wish list is trade out of this pick. Let's move. I read something yesterday. I don't put any credence into it, but like the Jets are talking about maybe moving up to number 1 or even to 2 for Cam Ward to get ahead of the Giants at 3. If you can get honestly, if you're not drafting in the top 3, and so if you can get a partner with like the Raiders or the Jets or a team even below that in this year's class, where we're talking about like historically loaded at defensive tackle, edge,
I'm with you,
running back. Get me more. I want quantity over quality when it comes to picks in this draft. So Borgonzi, I think, is kind of entertaining that, and I think that the organization of the Tennessee Titans is looking to try to move out of that spot. Unfortunately, it's like a unfortunately situation. If there was the quarterback that they're in love with, and again, I'm not saying that I definitively know that they don't love Cam Ward. I'm saying the information that I'm getting is that they'd rather trade out of that spot, which indicates that they don't believe that one of these quarterbacks is the guy. And they're doing some pretty realistic self-assessments of like, we're not a quarterback away right now.
Right.
We got to rebuild this thing a little. Smart.
Yeah.
And you look at Abdul Carter, the legendary performance playing with one functional arm in that Notre Dame college football playoff game. You look at him this year with the win rate, and I want you to understand this. He was tied for 3rd in the nation with a 23% win rate as a pass rusher this past year. And you say, well, if he's the best player, why wasn't he number 1? I want you to understand that no pass rusher that I've watched, at least, got more attention blocking wise, schematically, than Abdul Carter. So for him to have those numbers and to be 5th in the nation in sacks with 13, despite all that attention, speaks volumes about his ability. And for me, it's more about the tape, not the numbers, but the numbers kind of back it all up. And it was Chad Brinker, the Titans president of football operations, who made the comment, we won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft. So that's what we were referring to earlier. Number 2, Muench. Number 2. I know you agree with that one. Here's where I really want to get your opinion. I'm going to tell you what I heard. I'm going to give you the pick, and then you go from there.
Okay.
I've heard from multiple sources now. Okay. Cleveland they're not pulling the trigger on a quarterback here at 2. I've heard from multiple sources, multiple sources, that they don't believe that this is the year to do that, that they're not a quarterback in this class away, if that makes sense.
Right.
Had it been last year's class, they feel really good that they can kind of take off and run. So with that in mind, I went with Travis Hunter. I also want to make this. I know you said recently that you don't think that he's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft. In this scenario, I think Cleveland could take Travis Hunter, the cornerback wide receiver out of Colorado. I also want to say this. I've now heard from 2 different people that Kirk Cousins could be brought in on the cheap this offseason, kind of as a stopgap. So with that in mind, and again, I'll let you go. With that in mind, is Jackson Dart, is Tyler Shuck, from a value standpoint, whether it's sitting and waiting early in round 2, or if you're getting information that he could go to, I don't know, Pittsburgh later in 1. What are the Pittsburgh picks? 21, I think, somewhere in that range.
22 maybe, but that range,
20, yeah, somewhere in the early 20s. But I don't even think Pittsburgh's going to do that. So, and we could get to that later. But
you're right, 21.
But is it trading back into the late first? And don't forget this is an important part of it. By drafting a quarterback in the first round, even though you don't want to give up that pick to go move up a few spots from round 2 to 1, it's worth that pick because that 5th year option you get as a rookie draft pick. If you're a first round pick, there's a 5th year option that the NFL team gets. That extends the shelf life, if you will, of being able to play and operationally work with a quarterback on a rookie contract, which is invaluable. You're paying him peanuts compared to some of these numbers we're seeing for guys like Kirk Cousins, for what Sam Darnold might go make, even despite a very tough finish to the season, for Trevor Lawrence, for like some of the contracts we've seen in recent years, last couple years, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts there, Muench?
First of all, just to talk about the quarterback market is fascinating to me right now, because when you talk about guys like Matthew Stafford could be on the move, Aaron Rodgers, who we've already talked about, but someone might fall in love with, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, the overall quarterback market when you're looking at this class is fascinating to me. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go in another direction. I'm so terrified that I'm going to get painted in this corner if I don't like Travis Hunter, that I don't think Travis Hunter is very good. I just think it's early for him here. I think you go with someone up front. I think you have to improve your front. I think if you're going to trade Myles Garrett, which it sounds like they are, I don't think it's too early for a Michael Williams out of Georgia. I don't. I just think those players are more valuable at this spot. I love Travis Hunter. I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over again. I love Travis Hunter. I just think it's number 2 overall is early for him.
The Myles Garrett situation is going to be interesting.
Right. We'll see how that unfolds. And like you have, when you know better than anyone, when you're going through this, you're trying to read all the tea leaves, who's going to be available. Obviously, we got big news this week that the cap has jumped significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Some teams that we thought maybe couldn't keep guys, maybe they're in a better position to keep guys. You're trying to figure that all out right now. It'll get easier as you go because you'll get more and more information. But right now, you're trying to figure out, is Myles Garrett going to be in a Browns uniform next year? It seems crazy that he wouldn't be. But if he's not, and there's some, there's definitely some smoke there, then, I'm going up front again. I just think when you build your teams inside out, man, and to me, there's still enough value in that edge class to take an edge second overall.
Okay. So for these purposes, though, we've got Travis Hunter off the board. So the top 2 prospects on my board are gone. Now we get to the Giants. Right, wrong, indifferent. The future is absolutely now for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. And I think and it goes without saying, and I've been saying this 4 or 5 years. I was yelling at Mel, like, Brian Daboll can absolutely develop quarterbacks. I have a great appreciation for Brian Daboll as coach. Maybe higher than most, or I don't know. I don't know that it's shared, but with everyone. And obviously the struggles the last couple of years makes it hard to like plant my flag on that, but I do. With that said, the reality is the reality. And that reality is that they have to win this year. And they have, and I don't mean win like go to the playoffs. I mean show promise, not picking at number 3 a year from. If they're picking at number 3 a year from now, there's a new GM and there's a new head coach and for the Giants. Okay.
Right.
And so with that, you have to show in this next year that we're progressing in that direction and we've got our quarterback. And in order to do that, I'm assuming it will be Cam Ward at this point, but I don't know that for certain. But I went with Cam Ward here at number 3 to the New York Giants. You got your wide receiver 1, right? And I listen, I'm hearing the same stuff, like Sam Darnold could be here. Sam Darnold could be with the Raiders. Like I hear all those things, but my information, and I feel really good about this, my information is this is going to be a quarterback. Okay.
Right.
Like I feel really good about that. I just like, let's get that on the table. And so if that's the case, you got your wide receiver 1 in Malik Neighbors, you've you've got to, if you bring in Cam Ward, you get an opportunity to show a lot of life and a lot of promise on offense and to start turning things around. It just makes the most sense to me.
Hypothetical. Love the hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Joe Alt, the Notre Dame offensive tackle, is available this year. Do you think about pulling the trigger on Joe Alt there?
I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not in.
I would.
I don't have a couple younger kids and got a GM opportunity, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that I'm trying to keep.
It's a good point.
And don't get it twisted, folks. Like, when you're talking about drafting number 3 overall and quarterback is in play, this absolutely is. There's an ownership element to this, regardless of the organization, but there's an ownership element to this as well. So
yeah,
keep that in mind. Yeah. So that's it. I know you're going to be pissed, folks. I get it. Like, you want us to go through all 32 picks. We're not. I'll remind you real quickly, and that's not it for the show. We have a ton more to get to. We're like 25 minutes in, so like we're just warming up. But I'm saying that, like, we're not going to give you any more picks, like, definitively. We'll give a few more. I'm lying. We'll give a few more picks when Muench goes through the picks he likes later. But in the top 10, I want to now go through the scenarios, and we'll do that in a minute. But I want to remind everyone, just Google the McShay report. You get 2 options right here that will be the easiest. There are more, but 2 options that are the easiest. If you want this mock draft, it's not just this mock draft. It's the subsequent mock drafts. It's the player rankings that we're updating weekly as we're going through tape and like ripping through it. As I'm talking to people in the league, and Muench is talking to people in the league about injuries, about character issues, all those different things, interviews, everything. The rankings get updated. Like, I want to say bi-weekly. We'll see how it goes. Whenever it's important, certainly after the combine, whenever it's important to make an update, we're going to make an update throughout this process. We're going to have a lot of articles about draft buzz, what we're hearing, information that we're getting that I don't feel like a lot of other people are getting. And when other people are getting the information, our ability, I believe, to spin it forward and to explain, like, all right, well, if that happens, this is what falls in line. That's what we're going to provide. If you Google the McShay report right now, the first link that you'll see there, click on it. Everything that I can offer, Muench isn't doing the writing with me, but certainly is part of the process, okay? Everything that I have to offer through this year's draft, just $4. Again, we don't take it lightly. Can't appreciate people signing up, subscribing, and being a part of this more. We truly do. But we're going to put in the work, and we're going to make it absolutely worth the $4 to get through this draft, or the double down for $36 gets you through this draft, gets you through the entire offseason, the college football season next year, and through next year's draft. So you get 2 full drafts for $36. Double down, baby. Double down. All right. So let's go through some scenarios now. I mentioned my top 3 prospects. Okay. Mason Graham is not off the board, defensive tackle from Michigan. So one of that top tier players, when you get to pick 4 with the New England Patriots, is still available. There are other players still available. Let's pull up that top 10 again. Okay. We've got Ashton Jeanty, who I mentioned. There are a couple guys who are right on the cusp of the first tier. Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, the top 25 here. Sorry. Ashton Jeanty would be close to on that tier. I believe Tyler Warren, close to on that tier. Will Campbell, the best offensive lineman in this class. I don't think he's Joe Alt. He's not in that top tier, but he's in the top of the second tier. So there are other players here, the pass rushers as well from Georgia and beyond. With that in mind, Muench, the New England Patriots are sitting there, and we both live in New England. I got Bill Simmons texting me all the time about the good, the bad, the ugly with this. I've got all my friends, wanting to know what's going to happen. Everyone's still pissed off about winning in week 17 or week 18, the 17th game. But here we are, picking at 4. You've got an offensive tackle that everyone's mocking, Will Campbell, to the Patriots at 4. You've got Mason Graham, interior defensive lineman. I'm just fascinated. Let's just talk about the pick without giving away where we're going. I'm just fascinated with, all right, you got Mike Vrabel. He's making the final decision. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. Elliott Wolf, you've got the guys he brought in, like all of that. but he's making the final decision. You need an offensive lineman desperately. My grade's higher on Mason Graham. Vrabel played with Vince Wilfork and Coach Jeffrey Simmons. Knows the impact that a true absolute stud interior defensive lineman could have. If Travis Hunter were still to be here, would that be an area they would want to go? Do they already have their star cornerback, and you can't have having two of them is wonderful too, but are they getting enough value out of them at wide receiver? Like, there's just so many questions here. What jumps out to you? To me, offensive tackle, edge, wide receiver, the three biggest needs.
First of all, I'm going to say two things. One is my wife is going to listen to this pod later on, and she's going to say to herself, I can't believe that he didn't mention any of the names that he's not supposed to mention, because I'm terrible at this. I'm so afraid that I'm going to let something slip here. The second thing is I'm going to sound like a car salesman. This is where I would spend $4 just to see the next 6 picks, because this is where it gets interesting. I'll just tell you
totally
right now,
agree.
This is where it gets interesting. And I would just pay, and I know it sounds like a car salesman. I don't care. I would pay $4 to see what these next picks are, because it gets really good. One of the things that's fascinating to me is I love the idea of Josh McDaniels walking into Vrabel's office and saying, hey, Vrabes, a lot of depth in this defensive line class. You know, you can get one. You can get a great one later on. You're a great defensive coach. You don't need this guy. Maybe I want a tight end. Maybe I want a tight end that I think could be a franchise tight end. A guy that maybe could be my Gronk. That could be, we get another Gronk in New England. I love the idea of him possibly going in there. And that would be, look, that's early for a tight end, but man, Tyler Warren's such a good player that I think he's someone who's going to go very early.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think options are open here. I really do. Offensive tackle. Here's the problem.
It's not like they don't have a lot of needs. By the way, they have a ton of cap space. So what they do in free agency will ultimately make it a lot clearer what they're going to do there. But it's one of the good things about having so many holes in your roster is you have a lot of options.
And what's fascinating to me is what New England does. I mean, it's obvious, but does New England take the best player on the board in Mason Graham, or do they take an offensive tackle, or do they take maybe the second best player on the board in Tyler Warren?
Right.
That's fascinating. And then based off of what New England does it for, Jacksonville's sitting there, right? And you're like, shit, if we can get the third best player in Mason Graham,
they're praying Mason Graham falls there, I think.
At probably arguably the biggest need, at least in the top 2 or 3. But I would argue maybe, like they have a glaring need at defensive tackle for like an impact player like that. The third best player in this draft sitting at 5, one of the 3 guys in the elite tier on McShay's board. But I mean, I think a lot of people share in that concept that those are the 3 best players in this draft: Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Tyler Warren. And Mason Graham. So that would be, I think, the ideal fit if Mason Graham is sitting there. I also think it's fascinating. Like Liam Cohen was hired in large part to aid. I mean, there's no question. Like that's Trevor Lawrence, they like to aid him, to get him over the hump. I mean, his job, like, we've got to get Trevor over the hump. So
how do we best do that? Yep.
How do we best do that? And they don't have a new general manager, right? At this point, Tony Baselli, the Hall of Fame offensive tackle, was he's the team's executive vice president of football operations. He's working with ownership to hire a new GM. And so at this point, you don't even know who's like pulling the trigger. But maybe if Tyler Warren's there, you're like, that might be the best thing for me. And yeah, I get it. You drafted a Penn State tight end in the second round last year?
Yeah, they did.
Right?
Brenton Strange, yeah.
Yeah. And I liked Brenton Strange a lot, but I was pounding the table for Brenton Strange. Top 50 prospect last year. Out of nowhere, right? But it's obvious the huge difference in Tyler Warren as a tight end. And by the way, everyone's screaming about Evan Ingram, the tight end, former first round draft pick who came over to Jacksonville. I think he could be a cap casualty.
Right. Again, you're trying to Where's everything going here, man?
Right. And offensive line could be. So like, I don't know. There's just a lot of different ways you could go here. Then you get to Vegas. Go ahead. Sorry.
Especially just because there's not that elite offensive tackle talent, and there's, the wide receiver class is down, which opens up other positions, which I think is going to be one of the more interesting things about this draft. It opens up the possibility of a defensive tackle and a tight end going in the top 5 picks. That's just not normal.
You said to me the other day, I think we were texting or on the phone. What offensive tackle class did this remind you of with Will Campbell?
I don't remember now.
Was it the Northwestern guy?
You put me on the spot and I forgot.
The Northwestern tackle, right?
Rashawn Slater, that one?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't you. I had this conversation with somebody else.
I don't think it was me.
It's just coming back. I know who I was talking to.
I do that a lot. I don't think that's that.
No. It was another conversation I had with someone in the league. They said this. Rashawn Slater, like the scenario with Slater, is he a guard, is he a tackle, is similar to that of Slater. Is he a guard, is he a tackle? How high do you want? Like, he's awesome player, but is the value there for him that early? Yeah, that's a conversation I had with somebody else.
That's a conversation we could dive into. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into that more. But I think when we're starting to talk about teams like New England at 4 and Jacksonville at 5 and beyond, I think keep that in mind. So then the Raiders come on the board at 6. Here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that Sam Darnold, or a veteran quarterback, is absolutely, I don't want to say a priority, but they're exploring vigorously. I also know Tom Brady is like, campaigning is not the right word. He is one of his initiatives in terms of like helping the NFL move forward, and like one of the things that he is like a hot button for him. And you could just Google that, or, go on YouTube and look, is quarterbacks should not be thrust in. They can be if they're ready, but like very few are.
Right.
So with that as like he's done like speeches and like he really truly believes. So with that as the mindset, and also knowing that Tom has spent some time with Shador in the offseason and kind of mentor him, I could see a scenario in that regard. But I also don't know, like, if they go out and they spend all that money on a Sam Darnold, are we going in a different direction here? So that's what makes this spot intriguing. And like, this ain't show family, this is show business, Right. And so like, Tom worked. I don't think Tom's cutthroat, man. Don't get like the nice smile and like, and all the other stuff twisted. Like, he is cutthroat. And so he's not drafting someone because it worked with him or mentored him. And I think you got to truly keep that in mind with this 6th pick. Is Shador that guy? Do they believe, like, this is Tom's first just like major influence on a high draft pick in that organization? He is the most competitive human being out there. He does not want to miss on this. So when he's evaluating Shador and doing it not as Shador's mentor last summer, does he see a guy who he truly can, like, this is his organization in his mind, even though Mark Davis is has vast majority ownership, but this is his baby. And so that part's fascinating to me. The whole Brady concept is fascinating to me. So then you get to 7 with the Jets. Man,
another possible quarterback spot.
They could go anywhere here. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they could go Michael or Jalen Walker, the edges from Georgia. They could go offensive tackle, Will Campbell or others. They could go Will Johnson, cornerback, Michigan. They could trade up and try to get a quarterback, move up a couple spots ahead of the Raiders. If they think the Raiders are going to take their guy, if that is Shador, it's going to be fascinating.
Right. Be interesting to see what they do. Again, a team with a lot of different ways they could go, and it'll be interesting again to see how all these teams approach the quarterback position. Are they going to bring in a veteran? Is that what they're more comfortable with, and maybe a guy that they see as a bridge or are they going to target a quarterback in this draft?
There's a lot of talent on that roster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent on that roster. Like, this isn't a total rebuild. This is just finding the right guy at quarterback and pumping some life and energy into that position and into the offense. I also, just watching them live, like I've watched their tape and stuff, but just watching them live, they were not physical and tough versus the run up front, and they were not a great tackling group at linebacker. And that's not where they're going with this pick. But I think if you're a Jets fan, you watch throughout. Like, Aaron Glenn is not going to have a defense that can't, fuck up versus the run, and he's going to do that. He was that Detroit defense, one of the most blitz heavy defensive schemes in the league. So, like, when I mentioned a guy like Will Johnson, the cornerback here, even though you get the star on the other side, Sauce,
who didn't play all that way last year.
No.
He didn't.
And he's part of the tackling problems too. But I'm just saying, like, having two corners that can actually do it. You look at what they did. Like, they used a first-round pick on Terrion Arnold opposite Carlton Davis. That's one way to get tougher up front, is to get safety help, right? So that's a possibility. That the edge rush, like, bringing in another guy, like, certainly Will Campbell, if he's still there at 7, which he absolutely could be.
That's an interesting spot for an offensive tackle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now you in the last 4 years, you've drafted a bunch of talented guys, because you got Olu from last year. You got
they got Vera
Tucker that they drafted
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. You got Tippmann, the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who played pretty well last year.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, whoever you're plugging in at quarterback is actually, like, when's the last time a New York football team lined up and you said they got an advantage on the offensive line? Giants or Jets? It's been a minute.
Yeah. It's been like, I try to think back to the Rex Ryan years for the Jets. I'm not even sure those I'm thinking of the butt fumble. I'm not sure those offensive lines were that great.
Yeah. So, all right. And then you get down to Carolina, and we can kind of rip through these, but Carolina was interesting to me. I just think when you got here's the thing. We've gone through this trend, and I'm going to wear it out, and people are going to get sick of hearing it. But when you get your quarterback, build your defense, and build your defense up front. So Dan Morgan, the general manager, obviously former linebacker, has a great understanding of the importance of that. So this would be where I would think you would learn from the lessons of the Patrick Mahomes situation with Brett Veach, the general manager, and Andy Reid of the Chiefs, Howie Roseman, and how he's built that defense throughout. Even, they had multiple quarterbacks going back to 2010, but they've always built that defensive front, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Bills, we go on and on.
Yeah.
So this, to me, if they're trying to follow in the footsteps, instead of taking Tet McMillan, maybe you go defensive front with one of the edge rushers. That's a strong possibility. We'll see if they follow that. But they need a wide receiver, man.
Yeah. Be interesting to see when
Tet McMillan out of Arizona is the only guy that you hear any noise about in the top 20, and he's super talented.
Yep.
And there's kind of Drake London type tools coming out. Drake London was what, 7th overall pick or 8th by the Atlanta Falcons?
He was in that range.
10th? Yeah.
I could find it.
Saints are another team. Don't have your quarterback, but you need a lot of things. This wide receiver, edge, interior defensive line, tight end, corner. So you're like, if you're the Saints, you just sit back and like, all right, someone's going to fall. And Tet McMillan is a possibility, but I'm probably going to have better options at edge, interior defensive line, tight end, or cornerback, because this class is loaded with all those.
Yeah, I can't say it enough. Again, build in, like, inside out. Get your front settled before you start getting all these other players. And I love Tet McMillan, but I just don't see it. He's too much of a luxury for a team like the Saints. They need to get better up front.
I agree. And then we'll round it off with the Bears at 10. I like, you look at what Detroit did, and you got Ben Johnson coming in. And the reason they've had so much success is because their lines were built first. Right?
Mhm.
That offensive line and defensive line. And I think it ain't going to be sexy. There's been some misses there. There's been frustration, but you finally have a coordinator and a head coach who is, if he can't get it done with Caleb, and I think he will, but if he can't get it done, there's not many that could. And but you need an offensive line. You got to protect him. I mean, he wasn't. He was part of the problem, holding on to the ball, indecisiveness, not knowing where to go, all those things. And he'll speed up his clock. Ben Johnson will. But the offensive line was absolutely at fault too. Yeah. So that's another. And we get into the offensive line in this class. Is Will Campbell still available at 10? Is it Kelvin Banks? Is it Josh Simmons, who we'll talk a lot about in this pre-draft process? Super talented Ohio State player, but only played 6 games this past year or 4.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are with the top 10. Again, just Google the McShay report. And it's right there. It'll be the first line there. Just click on it. Everything that I've got for you, buzz, rankings, draft, inside articles about what's going on in the league and what the philosophies are, everything that I've got. We'll have two pieces a week between now and the draft and beyond. One will be free. One will be part of the subscription. For $4, you can have all of this content. And I know I'm starting to sound like a used car.
It's like a latte. It's like a latte.
Yeah. No, it's like half a latte, depending on what state you live in. It's literally half a latte. Or $36 to double down. You get this draft, which you can get for $4, but then you get all of the offseason and you get the entire next year's draft. And this $4 special is not going to last forever. So that's it. Those are the options. All right, Muench, we just went through the scenarios. We went through the top 3 picks. Give me your 4 takeaways. You're free to give 4 players that were picked by the team. So we're going to give away 4 more picks here. You're free to give those 4 picks away and tell me what was interesting to you about them.
Before we get into that, really quickly,
yes.
Give me your honorable mention. Give me your mock 1.0 honorable mention, a guy that could easily end up in your final mock. You just didn't find the right fit for him at this point. A player that you think that people, again, a guy that you think could end up in that last first round mock.
I think Malachi Starks is one of them. Okay. Malachi Starks is absolutely safety out of Georgia. Okay. Absolutely one of them. Just going down my list here. Malachi Starks. Another safety, your boy.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Emanwari, the safety from South Carolina, was certainly in consideration. Okay. It's going to be interesting because, and we'll get through the position. We had a lot of defensive linemen, actually a good amount of offensive linemen. We had, I guess, a little bit more tight end influence than usual, more running back influence than usual.
Yeah.
So that, like, when you talk about a position that's not considered a priority position, that it got bumped down. It's not necessarily where the grades are on these players. I think they're both, later first round prospects. Starks was talked about maybe top 10, top 15. Didn't have the best year in 2024, but I think he's still a great player. Beyond that, wide receiver, Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State and Luther Burden, Missouri, are 2 guys that I kind of wanted to, and I think absolutely could get in the first round, but they weren't in here. 2 tight ends, Mason Taylor, LSU, and Elijah Arroyo. I'm not saying he will, but there's a little movement on that.
I love that I asked for 1 and I'm getting 10. It's great.
A couple smaller school guys that I think could be like, there's always like that 1 or 2 in the last 5-6 picks. And I think a couple like Darius Alexander, interior defensive lineman, Toledo. If he works out as well as I think he will, like 285, 290 pounds, whatever it is. Yeah, at the combine.
The momentum is real for him.
Yeah, and your boy Gray Zabel, the interior offensive lineman.
That's my guy.
Yeah, I just I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying won't be shocked if we start to see like a mock draft or 2 with some of those guys, or if one of those 2 guys sneaks into the late first when it's all said and done, because they're both really intriguing players. So go ahead. Nice. Give me 4 picks.
I hope Tucker's ready with the sound effect because with the 13th overall pick, the Miami Dolphins select Missouri offensive guard. Yes, Tucker. Offensive tackle Armand Membu. I love this pick.
Okay.
You look at how Miami's built. They run outside zone 43% of the time last year. They want to run outside zone. Look at their running backs. All right. They got Davon Achon. I thought it was A-Chain. I looked it up. It's Achon. We've
talked about this like 5 times, but I'm glad.
I know. I still can't get it right, though.
Okay.
Jalen Wright. And then they had Raheem Mostert last year. They're going to release him. But again, another guy who's a burner. Those guys all have one thing in common. They ran sub 4.4 40-yard dashes. And then you look at the numbers. 4.1 4 yards per carry last year, towards the bottom of the league. 16th in explosive runs. This is a team that needs to get more out of their run game. Armand Membu is built. This is his DNA. This is what he does. He is a zone run blocker. I love
at 330 too, 330 pounds.
The way he moves, man, the way he can seal the edge and work up to the second level is unique for a player with that size. And then you look at what they have on their roster already, and they need help at guard. And in a perfect world, Membu would slide into guard. I think that's where he has the most upside, but he can also play offensive tackle and right tackle. Austin Jackson's had some problems staying healthy. If they need an insurance policy, you now have a player that can slide in as a starter at guard. And if things don't work out at right tackle, you have a player that can move out there and help you. I think maybe it's a little early for some people, especially if he's a guard. 13th, you're getting a guard.
I don't know. I'm starting to hear things, man.
I love him.
I'm starting to hear that.
Fit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. I've heard from a couple of people that when the workout's done at the combine at 330. The way he moves, like the gap might not
34-inch arms, not terrible, not great, but not terrible.
It might bridge the gap a little bit with he and Will Campbell is what I've heard a little bit.
Interesting. Anyways, all right. So for all those reasons, I love.
And he's young too. I think he turns 21 as a rookie.
Yeah. And then also he's going to help keep your quarterback who's had some problems staying healthy clean. He's going to be a good pass blocker, especially on the inside. So when you look at the fit, the speed they have in the backfield, what he does, what they like to do, to me, that was a home run of a pick.
He played 1,658 snaps at right tackle the last 2 years, only one at left guard.
Right.
But that move would be easy. But as you talk about right tackle for him and for Miami, if needing to play there, that would be his home, right?
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
With the 25th overall pick,
the
Houston Texans select Ohio State offensive tackle Josh Simmons. You get the best offensive tackle in the draft at 25. But this is what I loved about this pick. This is the McShay magic, because you're going to look at that pick and you're going to say, but they have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. He's gone to 4 of the last 6 Pro Bowls, still playing at a very high level. They have Titus Howard, who can play guard or right tackle. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Blake Fisher. Mensch, did you like Fisher coming out of Notre Dame? Yes, I did. And do I think it's maybe too early to give up on him? I do. But start digging a little bit deeper on this team. 3rd worst in the league, 54 sacks allowed. They've got to figure out a way to protect their quarterback.
It was brutal watching that.
Titus Howard, a better fit at guard than tackle. Now look at their cap situation. They're spending $28 million on Laramie Tunsil. I know that he's still playing at a high level. He'll be 31 at the start of next year. Is that a player that you start looking at as maybe we trade high? Maybe we sell high. Maybe we look to move on, because not only do they pay him $28 million, but they're going to pay Titus Howard $23 million.
Yeah.
They have so much money invested in an offensive line that
isn't doing its job.
They got to figure it out, man. And to me, I'll say this again.
You're not moving on from Laramie next year, but it could be the following year when it's his final year under contract is my guess. And plug in someone here. Yeah, fine. But I'm saying the more likely scenario is let's get the most 5 talented we can this year, see how they play, move guys around if we need to. And then going into the following year, we know what we have to work with. We're staring at a massive salary with Laramie Tunsil in his final year.
Yep.
And you spin it forward a little bit roster wise.
Got to dig a little deeper with this one. But Simmons also, just to note, last 2 years at left tackle, The year before that, he started at right tackle. This guy's got plenty of experience playing both sides. Him playing right tackle will not be an issue for him. He'll be just fine doing that. And again, if he's not hurt, he's still he's my top tackle on my board. He just moves different. I think he's the best tackle in this draft, and I don't care about the injury. Like unless there's something that's going to be a problem long term, then
I felt like this is a little low for Josh Simmons when I did it, to be honest.
Oh, 25. If you're a Houston Texans fan, you see this, you might think to yourself, that's not really one of our most pressing needs. Stop. Getting him here would be an absolute coup in my mind. And speaking of coups, with the 29th.
I love how it looks like a contract that was sent to you to sign. You get your
I had to, because whatever.
I love it.
You know me. I'm trying to organize. With the 29th overall pick, the Washington Commanders select Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden at 29, McShay?
Yes.
It's been a good year for the Commanders, and it's getting better apparently. You're talking about putting
I love your energy.
You're talking about putting this guy opposite of Terry McLaurin. Oh my God. I think he's arguably, I know Tet's a little bit different. McMillan's a little bit different because of the build. And I could see him going. I wouldn't be surprised if on my board I had McMillan ahead of Golden. But I'm telling you this right now, it's not going to be much of a difference. I think Golden he's the best route runner, in my opinion, out of the top prospects. You see the ball skills downfield. You see the run that he had at the end of the year. Getting him at 29 is an absolute steal. And they have other needs, but they also have a ton of cap space. Go out and fill those needs through trades, through free agency. You can go do that. If you can get a value pick and fill a need like Matthew Golden at 29, home run. It's been a great year. It continues to be a great year for the Commanders. And then I have to do it because we just talked about it on the other day. With the 32nd overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select South Carolina defensive tackle TJ Sanders. Does it seem like it's a pressing need to get a defensive tackle? Maybe not. We've talked ad nauseum about how this is how they've built their team. Get the best defensive lineman in there. And you look at a guy like Milton Williams is a free agent. He's a free agent. The cap's gone up. Maybe they have a better chance of re-signing him because I didn't think they were going to have any shot of re-signing him. But even if they get him back, you're going to have to make a decision, I think, ultimately between him and Jordan Davis. Are you going to bring Jordan Davis back for that 5th year? I don't think you can invest that much money in that one position. So I think you're going to need a defensive tackle in the next year or two. And when I look at TJ Sanders' game, you know who he reminds me of? Milton Williams. Great hands, violent hands, gets after the quarterback, a little bit undersized. They have a lot of comp. It's a pretty good comp in my mind between those two. And I said, I think TJ Sanders is a home run first-round pick when I watch his tape. I love the way he plays the run. I think he can get after the quarterback. Leave it to Howie to wait and not trade up in this situation and get that kind of a player that late in the first-round draft. Love that pick.
Not everyone in the league would agree with you, but I put him there, so I'm standing on it. But
he's been wrong before.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, please. Sanders, different reactions from people in the league, which is interesting. I love it, Muench. You didn't really knock me that much.
This is great. Okay. No, I didn't really have. There wasn't a lot that I was. There was.
It's 1.0. I get it. It's early.
Yeah, there's also a couple places where I would have gone with maybe a different player, but again, splitting hairs. As we get, trust me, anyone who's watched us on this show or listened to us on this show or knows anything about us knows that I will take every opportunity that I get to tear you down.
Well aware.
I enjoy it. So the fact that I didn't, it was a great mock.
I appreciate it. Just a reminder, Google the McShay report. First link you'll see right there. Click on it. Everything that I've got for you for getting through this draft for $4. If you want to double down and get through the entire next year's draft for 2026, $36. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, click on the link. Takes you right there. Nice and easy. In addition, and we've got more stuff here. And to our producer's chagrin, sitting in the back right now, who were up, by the way, till like probably 2 a.m, and then I was starting to text people on the West Coast at 4:30 in the morning. So they're like, "Shut up, McShay and Muench. We've had enough." But we got a little bit more here. But I do want to mention no show on Monday. Okay. But it's because we're going to let this breathe at the mock draft. Have at it. Have some fun. Make your comments. I'll check out your comments. We'll have some fun on social media. But more importantly, because we're flying out on Wednesday morning to the combine. We're going to have a preview show on Wednesday. We've got all the with a lot of information, what we're hearing. I'm having conversations even with people in Indy prior to getting there. A lot of the agents are there earlier in the week because and the GMs do some media stuff on like Tuesday and then the podium on Wednesday. But then they get into like workouts and meetings and stuff and kind of get shut off a little bit. So there's information that always comes out early in the week. We'll touch on those things. We'll also touch on some of the measurables and things that we found out. But on Thursday, the second show of the week at the combine, it'll be the first day of workouts. And same on Thursday, same on Friday. So it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And Saturday is the last one, which is the biggest show that we're going to have. And we'll probably have to cover 2 hours of that with the running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers. Then we fly back on Sunday, and then on the following Monday, we're going to have a review show. So stay tuned for that. That's the upcoming schedule. Excuse me. Last thing, Muench. Of course, I can't. Oh, there we go. I went through and did some things. Like again, we haven't shared every pick. If you want it, go subscribe for it, please. We appreciate you doing so. We truly do. Not taking it lightly. I don't like asking for $4, let alone $36 or anything else. But the information's there. I look at this class and it's interesting in a few areas. And I want to get your opinion on all of these. The running back group. The last time, if it were to play out this way, and I'm giving away a little bit more here. If it were to play out this way, the last time there were 3 running backs drafted in the first round was 2018. Not forever ago, but it's been a minute.
Right.
That was Saquon Barkley, Rashad Penny, Sonny Michel. Mixed bag, obviously.
Mixed bag.
Okay. Wide receiver. Last time, let me preface this. Wide receiver. Only had 2 wide receivers in this year's class. First one didn't come off the board for a minute, okay? Not going to give you exactly where he went. But I will tell you that Tet McMillan and Golden, who we just touched on, Matthew Golden, they were the 2 wide receivers to come off the board. Muench gave that away.
Outside of Hunter, who I don't think you're going to count as in this group, right? Like you're
Correct.
looking at him.
Thank you for
okay. All right.
Thank
Just want to be clear.
you. We're going to count him as a cornerback moving forward. That's going to be his primary position, but absolutely will play a factor on the offensive side at wide receiver. The 3-year average match. Remember, I've talked to you about, and we've talked about. I haven't talked to you about. We've talked about how spoiled the NFL has gotten with wide receivers in the last decade. It's been wild. The 3-year average is almost 6 wide receivers in the first round. 6.
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
I think this year's class is similar, though, to the 2023 class. That year, Jackson Smith and Jigba was the first wide receiver taken, first of 4 wide receivers taken. And again, I think there could be up to 4. I think we could have a scenario where it's Tet McMillan, it's Matthew Golden, it is Emeka Egbuka, and Luther Burden III, in whatever order. So 2023, I draw a lot of similarities, right? Jackson Smith and Jigba was drafted 20 overall by Seattle that year. Quentin Johnson went to the Chargers 1 pick later, 21. Zay Flowers went 1 pick later, 22.
Yeah, they run
to the Ravens.
Run,
yes. Yeah. Jordan Addison from USC
1 pick later
went to the Vikings and 1 pick later, 23. I could see a similar situation. I think Tet McMillan's got a chance to go top 15. I've seen him mocked in the top 10. Okay. I didn't have him going till later. So I think if you're to look at this year's mock, I think that 2023 group kind of, or even this year's class, forget about the mock for a minute. This year's class is similar to that 2023 group. But the last time there were only 2 wide receivers taken in the first round, which is what this mock has, was 2019. That was Hollywood Brown and N'Keal Harry. Thought that was interesting. Defensive line.
That class, by the way, can we talk about that really quickly? Just it's not. So the 2, it was Marquise Brown and N'Keal Harry taken in the first round, which is kind of meh, not great
at best.
The second round in that draft,
I know,
Deebo Samuel, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. In the third round of that draft, Terry McLaurin. So you look at that draft, you're like, oh, not that great. And then you're like, oh, well, wait a second. Yeah, there's 4 dudes right there in the first 3 rounds. But anyways, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I love that. That's a great point.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to, as much as I think running back and wide receiver and probably linebacker, the 3 positions you can get your guys. Look at the Steelers over the years, all the second round picks. Look at the
Packers did it
Packers
for
over the
years,
years,
yeah.
second, third round, fourth round picks. You can get your guys in later rounds. And then look at the great drafting teams, look at the great organization. Forget great drafting teams. Look at the great organizations in the last 2 decades or 15 years. Their fuck ups are usually at wide receiver and running back early. I mean, honestly,
don't hold back. Yeah.
Bill Belichick couldn't find, when they wouldn't spend a ton, couldn't find a guy. Also struggled at cornerback, but couldn't find a running back or receiver that was worth that pick in the first and second round, or first and early second. The Eagles struggles. The Chiefs struggles.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but they had other issues. Yeah.
So I guess the point is, when you got 11 defensive linemen going in my mock draft, and this is a perfect transition, there are 11 defensive linemen. We talked about 20 interior defensive linemen with grades in the first 3 rounds. We talked about 17, 20 edge rushers in the first 3 rounds. When you've got that kind of talent at that premium position, go with it. Take advantage. Cash in. This year, speaking of which, 11 defensive linemen I had going in this mock draft. 2019 was the last time we had 11. I want you to listen to some of the names in that class, dude. Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, Edges, Nick Bosa, Rashawn Gary, Sweat. Those are just to name a few, right?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, 2019 was the last time we had 5 interior defensive linemen, which is what we have in this mock draft. 5 interior defensive linemen. I just mentioned those names: Williams, Oliver, Wilkins, Lawrence, and beyond that year. Edge rushers, I had 6. The last year that there were 6 edge rushers was 2017. That was the Myles Garrett, Solomon Thomas, Derek Barnett class, right? So it's been a minute. But again, 11 defensive linemen going in this first round. And then the last thing I wanted to get to, the tight ends. This one was interesting to me, man. I have 2 tight ends going relatively early, okay? The last time that there were 2 tight ends taken in the top, let's pick 17, 18 picks, somewhere in that range, okay? Was 1992.
Wow.
And you can absolutely
92. That's wow.
We haven't had 2 tight ends drafted in the first round since 2019. So you're going back 6 years. It's been 6 classes, okay? Or 20, 21, 22, 23, 25 classes since, okay? That's a lock. That's happening, folks. Absolutely, there's going to be 2 tight ends. So this will be 6 years from 2019. That will happen again. 3 tight ends drafted in the first round. You got to go back to 2017, 2 years earlier. That was OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, and Joko, right?
Yeah. George Kittle, a 5th rounder that year.
Exactly. Love it. So while I had 2 in this first round, I mentioned 2 names: Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, LSU and Miami, respectively. Could bump that up and make this the first class since 2017 with 3. Okay. But I mentioned 1992. The last time 2 tight ends went in the top 17 picks: Derek Brown, Johnny Mitchell. I've got to tell you, from the people I'm talking to, there's a really good chance. I mean, a really good chance. Tyler Warren is a top 10 pick, and Colston Loveland is somewhere in that top 15, 17 range.
Yeah. What was your Johnny Mitchell report what it looked like?
92. No, I'm trying to think that.
You would have been in high school.
Yeah, but like a freshman. No, freshman, sophomore, or something like that. Yeah.
All right, you're kind of bearing the lead here, and I don't know if you want to reveal it.
No, I was waiting for you. I was the best for last.
How many how many quarterbacks are in this first round here?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one because I expected a little bit different.
Okay.
That's all
I think that's a perfect way to end. If you want to see it, if you want to read the whole thing, if you want to get all of our draft buzz, the information we're getting from 25 years of cultivating these relationships with people in the NFL, what we're hearing, the conversations we're having about, just like they're fun. I can't share everything verbatim or put names, but like I'm gonna keep you posted on what we're hearing the next couple months leading up to the draft. If you want to know what your team's looking at, like the roster studying that we're doing, from salary cap to financial placement per position, to the needs that need to be addressed, not just this year, but looking ahead, in the next couple of years, we're going to dive deep into all those things in the next couple of months. $4. If you go and type in the McShay Report, just Google it. The McShay Report, do it. Click on this link if you're watching on YouTube. You can get right to it. Please subscribe. As I started off this thing saying, there are two things you need to know. Like, we can't appreciate your support, not just with the newsletter that's starting out, but with like this whole show and the amount of people that are flooding in now that the season's over and we're getting ready for the draft. It's starting to take off, and we don't take it for granted. We really don't. And number two is, like, I don't ask for money. I don't but it's just the nature of the business. We've got mock drafts. We've got draft rankings. We're putting in a lot of work, and hopefully it's not too much for people to afford. But I don't, and I know my good friend Steve Muench does not take it lightly. So we understand. So you can be pissed off. I understand it. But yeah, it's just where it is. Again, we appreciate you. This has been fun. Like, I feel like we're finally, we're back on the horse now, right? Mock 1.0 is out. Now we're back on the horse. We got the combine coming up. This show is going to last. It's going to sit. We'll do some cut-ups and all of that. But we're not going to have a show on Monday or Tuesday. On Wednesday, we're back in it, as I mentioned. We get 4 straight days from Indianapolis, right on Radio Row. We're going to interview some GMs. We're going to share all the conversations that we're having that are shareable. We're going to break down all the numbers, the 40-yard dashes, the vertical jumps, the 3 cones, the arm lengths, the broad jumps, all the stuff. We're going to dive in, and we're going to let you know. Mench and I put a lot of time, like year after year after year, of figuring out the measurables that matter at each position. We're going to share all that information with you, stuff that we've never been able to share before. So please join us in Indianapolis for that 4-day stretch. But we will see you on Wednesday from Indy. Thanks, Mensch, and thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.